Dudes, you have no idea how difficult it was to make this top. There are a lot of games that really have a cool plot and it's very difficult to choose the best one from them. I don't want to just read out the description of such videos from Peekaboo. In such videos I share my opinion and try to describe my impressions of a particular game as much as possible. In another way, I make such videos with my soul. They are difficult to make, it takes a long time to approach them in order to write the script correctly, describe each game beautifully. But I like to make such videos, I pour my soul into them. I took the plot as a basis, because for me this is the main thing in games, and everything else is already fading into the background. And yes, after passing each game from this video, I assure you, you will not say exactly what I spent my time on. So let's not waste it now and move on to the games. And let's start with the game, which was released in the 20th year and of course it is a resident of the Pitchfork. For me, this is the best part of the series, although it continues the story of the 7th, I got more pleasure from the 8th part than from the 7th. The game takes place in a small snow-covered European village, where Ethan, the protagonist of the 7th resident, gets completely by accident and tries to return to normal life with his wife in order to forget about all the nightmares that have happened to them over the past few years. Cool characters, a frightening winter atmosphere, in order to just go through it right now, it's just perfect. The game is played in 2 breaths, I like that it is not very short and not so that it has time to get bored. Normal, in moments it will be a bit boring when you go back and forth, but this is how the game copes with the right atmosphere for horror in a pseudo-open world. And when I passed it, I was really glad, because I didn't expect anything from her at all, and she pleasantly surprised me and left behind such a pleasant aftertaste. Well, in short, I didn't regret that I passed it, it's a cool game and it's not for nothing that she's in this top. The fact that I decided to put it in the last place does not mean anything, every game from this video deserves attention, just some a little less, and some a little more, but they are all masterpieces. And it will be closer to the end, because there are just masterpieces that I could not share in places. Well, okay, and the next Call of Duty game is WWII. BB2 is a game with awesome realistic graphics, a short and very interesting story. Yes, the plot here can be praised, although for this series of games it has not been the main thing for a long time. Well, as I said, I didn't like Modern Warfare, neither the plot, nor everyone's favorite twist with Price. Well, I don't like games about new wars. I love the aesthetics of the Second and First World Wars, with all this real lively atmosphere, realistic weapons, trenches, dugouts, and therefore for me Calda is a game about the First and Second World Wars, but not about cyberwar with robots and everything that this series has turned into there. That's it, we close the topic. You want to play, you want not, the game has really gone to me, it passes very quickly, there is no Grindelka, walking in the same places, long transitions from place to place, in short, everything that bothers in other games. For the first time I see that the Calda developers did not stretch the game, but showed a whole interesting story. The entire Gardason series. Why the whole series? Because it seems to me that you will like the first part so much that you will come to this decision yourself. Yes, it is impossible to perceive these 3 parts as separate stories, because somehow they are intertwined with each other. Moreover, they pass very quickly and everything about everything will take you a maximum of a couple of days if you sit down and go through in one gulp. Briefly, so that you understand what the game is about. Many people may know her by her tattoo and by this mask. These 2 attributes are the calling card of the game, and Corva, the main character of the first part, wears these attributes. In general, from the Gardason series, this is a stealth game that can be completed absolutely without killing, using only your skill. Incarnate in others, move, use other abilities that you will pump from your hero as the game progresses. I like pumping in the game, very interesting mechanics, and in order for you to pump, you need to first find the runes, and then think that it is better to pump so that it will be easier for you to pass the game in the future. And also the game can be played as a tank, but in this case you will not see a good ending. Yes, it affects the endings, but your main characters are not executioners, but liberators of the city, and your choice will also affect the ending, so even fierce scum you will need to spare sometimes. In principle, it is realistic to pass the game without killing, because the variability of the game allows you to do this, which makes it much more interesting to pass the game. The best Steel series of games, to be brief, which even after 4 passes of the first part and 2 times of the second never bothered me, I would gladly go through each of these games again. A series of Bioshock games. A very atmospheric series of games. Remember I said that the most important thing for me in games is the plot. So somewhere nearby I have a thing with the atmosphere, and in this series of games it's just unreal. Take for example Half-Life, a game with a good plot, even a very good one, but this is not the most important thing in this game, the main thing is the atmosphere. I can say the same about the Bioshock. The plot is here, well, we are all here, and if objectively, it is simple, but the atmosphere makes the assessment much higher. And then again, how to explain to those who have not yet passed this? No way, only you need to go in and enjoy the sounds of the game, locations and textures. But why is it worth going through the whole series? No, they are not related to each other as the Dishonored series of games, but each of the parts is also quite unique. The actions of the first part take place in the underwater city of Delight, which was built for the world elite of the 50s and 60s, in order to separate geniuses from ordinary people and make them even better. It was assumed that bioplasmids would help them in this, but they did not have a positive effect on human organisms, but quite the opposite, which turned people into monsters that will interfere with you during the passage of the entire game. The middle of the 20th century in the game is transmitted just perfectly, plus the game is from the first person and therefore the immersion in the game is just 100%, which just gives you goosebumps when you realize that you are in a city underwater. Your main character's name is Jack Ryan, who finds himself in the city by accident due to the crash of the plane in which he was flying. In the wreckage of an airplane in the middle of the ocean, he finds a lighthouse that leads him to this underwater city. I forgot to mention the unique abilities that, with the help of the same plasmids, will give the main character a unique power. But you will figure it out yourself as the game progresses. There are two parts in this city, the first and the second. The second one already tells about one of the monsters that you will play for, but spoilers will go further there, so it's better to go through these games yourself. And there is also Infinity. This is the next part of the Bioshock, which takes us from the underwater city to the aerial city of Columbia, which is no less atmospheric, but absolutely different from the gloomy Delight. It's so light and pleasant that you don't just want to be. But I personally like the plot more in the first two parts, but in Infinity it is quite confusing and interesting, so I also advise you to go through this series of games. Alan Wake is a game that will tell you the story of a writer with a crisis who has not been able to write anything for more than 10 years, and he decides to change the situation and go far away from his usual place of residence. And it helps, but then the story takes the most unexpected turn and Alan finds himself inside his story, which for us borders on reality. This is the kind of game that you should definitely go through at night, because I have no idea at all how you can play it during the day, so put this game on when you have a free night, when you do all your business or postpone them for later. The ideal time is holidays or vacations, weekends there. Well, in general, the game requires maximum immersion in yourself. You can't get distracted when you're going through it. I personally went through it in one gulp overnight. I forgot about all my business and completely immersed myself in it. Believe me, this is required by the atmosphere that the game gives you. It looks like an interactive movie, but not quite the horror, but also not quite pulls. But sometimes there were just the most calm moments, and when you expect something to pop out now, nothing happens. And when he doesn't expect it at all, the plot abruptly turns in some other direction. I can definitely say 10 out of 10 about the plot of this game, although I was most of all stunned by the ending and she just added these 10 points. By the way, last year announced the continuation of this gorgeous story, the release of which is scheduled for 2023. But I told you more about it in a video about the games that I'm waiting for in 2022, so click, watch, after you pass the first part. I'm sure you will definitely be interested in seeing the continuation of this story. The Assassin's Creed game series, all parts from the first to Unity. I think absolutely everyone has heard about this series of games, even if they have never played any of the parts. I was one of those who met her quite recently. Literally 3 years ago I played the first part of this franchise and gradually passed the subsequent parts in turn. During this time, I have gone through all the parts with the fillings that you now see on your screens. But I could not go further than either Origin, Odyssey, or Valhalla. That's not my games at all. This is not the same Assassin that was before. Now it's something nasty, something that's difficult and I don't really want to play. Well, maybe I'll pass Valhalla, but I'll probably skip these two parts before it. In general, they didn't interest me in anything, and I don't want to play through force. But all the games are series. From the first part I'm already on Unity. At least I advise you to go through all the main games of the series. The first part is awesome, but for many beginners who have never played in any part of the Assassin series before, it may seem difficult and boring in some places. It may just be unpleasant for you to play it, since many mechanics have already become outdated since that time. But this is not surprising. The game is 2007 years old and now it needs a remake very much. From the second part, you are already starting to enjoy the passage of this game, because here the mechanics have become better and they have tried to work on the plot. But you need to start going through the story from the first part. Firstly, in contrast, the second part immediately after passing the difficult first one seemed to you just a masterpiece, and also to learn the story of Desmond, which will last right up to the third part. In general, these are the parts you need to go through. They contain the story of Desmond. This is a dude who, through the Animus, will return to the time of the Assassins and go through everything that his ancestors, who were assassins, went through. Further, after the third part, the story of Desmond ends, but the story of the Assassins is already intertwined. If you go through these parts in one gulp after another, you will learn a lot of great stories, fates and how they are intertwined with each other. But the first three parts you just have to go through to learn the story of Desmond. After the third one, you yourself will be wondering what will happen next. The 4 became my favorite part, although when I hadn't passed it yet, I saw that many people hated this part and said that Black Flag was the worst game of the series, and like a fool I trusted someone else's opinion, even without playing the game myself, and was negative about it. But when it was my turn to go through it, it became my favorite part of all the Assassin's Creed games. And after that, I learned not to trust someone else's opinion until I check it myself and am sure of something. Then there are also great games, in each part the plot is very good. But my favorite is the second and its two direct sequels, which continue the story of a very cool assassin, whose name is Asu. If you are not familiar with this series, it does not mean anything to you yet, but then you will remember my words, it is very cool. And I also really liked the fourth part, the atmosphere of piracy there is better than in any other pirate game. Rock is also very cool and Unity is kick-ass beautiful. Very interesting places and personalities of France of the 17th century, which elegantly show the times of the revolution of those years. The atmosphere in this game is just something. Syndicate there is also a very awesome atmosphere of 18th century England, just to walk and enjoy the city. But the plot is a little weak, as for me, for such a chic and atmospheric world that the developer turned out. Although the personalities in the game are very interesting, and the places are very, very cool, but the plot is 5 out of 10. Then I stopped at Odyssey and I'm just not interested in playing it, so in a year maybe I'll force myself to go through it and tell you about it with Odyssey Valhalla, but so far. Mafia 2, playing with the unreal winter atmosphere of New York in the 40s of the 20th century in wonderful stories about an ordinary guy who, after the war, cannot decide on his life in any way, choose the path of a bandit and a gangster or try to do what he likes and find himself in life. As the game progresses, you will see how fate leaves the main character because of the wrong choice. Vita Scalita is a cult character from the world of video games, and Mafia 2 is a game about the peak of the criminal years of America, when the Mafia flourished at all. And the developers incredibly managed to bring the atmosphere of that underworld. And the plot, yes, you will begin to sympathize with the character more than once during the passage. And I'm extremely jealous of you if you haven't played this game yet and found out about it in the winter. The game takes place in the fictional city of Empire Bay, the prototype of which was Winter New York. Plus the magical decorations of that time, such as buildings or cars, it's just a masterpiece that only adds to the atmosphere of those years. You will just have a lump in your throat if you just drag along the style of those years. This is exactly the feeling I had when I walked through the winter streets of this game. Especially in the 20th year, the remaster of this part left, and this is a great reason to go through it on a warm winter evening. I did not pass the first part, but I will pass the definition in Dishonored tonight, right after I release this video. So I won't say anything about her yet, but I have high expectations. Outlast. For me, this is the best horror story, but they haven't come up with a better one yet, as I think. Everything is perfect in it. A story that tells about a journalist who, at night, at an invitation from an unknown person to his mail, comes to an abandoned hospital with a camera and 2 batteries. Yes, not the smartest Persian we have, but you can write off his stupidity for courage. Upon arrival at the place, it turns out that a new guest is not welcome here at all, but Miles, and that's the name of our main character, decides not to give up just like that and finds another entrance to this mental hospital, which he will regret more than once. As soon as you get into the building, creepy moments and screamers will be waiting for you, and in the dark, night vision mode in your camera will help you see. There is no open world in the game and, accordingly, what infuriates many in big games. This is stretching the plot. Here you do not go back and forth and do not grind anything. There are no repetitive locations and tasks, you just go through a good interesting linear game. And because of the eye-catching elements of the interior, which unobtrusively tells the player what he needs to do next, you don't get lost, but with pleasure, without blundering through the game. The game will keep you in suspense from the very beginning, but I will keep you in suspense until the very end. Especially if you are going through it for the first time. The atmosphere in the game makes the screamers scared even when repassing, and when you pass the game for the first time, you are afraid to just take a step. I'm not talking about some wrong step, you're stupidly afraid to come out of hiding, because you're scared. And even the realization that this is just a game, did not let me calm down even with the 7th playthrough. I did catch a couple of screamers, but as a child, when I first played this game, I almost abandoned it at the beginning, because I was very scared. And also music. I consider her to be the best and most appropriate in this game among all the games that currently exist. It only heats up fear and fear further, and also always pops up at the right moment, in order to give the mood of what is happening in the game. For example, when 3 people are running after you in the game and you are very scared because of the sound. If you knock him out, you won't be so scared, and you won't be afraid at all, because you won't have this full immersion in the game. In short, Red Burls managed to make you forget that you are playing a game. It's like you're being transported to that hospital. And even the graphics, which I always pay attention to last, are a masterpiece here. The game, which after almost 10 years is not required at all, is not a remake or any remaster, but at least some improvement, thanks to its unreal in the good sense of the word, realism, which 100% conveys the atmosphere of an abandoned mental hospital. Shabby walls, dim frightening light, creep NPCs in the end. Due to the fact that there are real people in the game, your brain perceives it as something real, which I did not have, for example, when I passed Alien or the second Outlast. Because there were monsters there that my brain just doesn't believe in. I didn't like the second part of Outlast at all, the plot didn't come to me, and this is a completely different game. I don't want to perceive it as a game from the Outlast series. For me, Outlast is a sense of inevitability in narrow dark corridors, and not flashbacks that take us from the forest with monsters in which it is impossible to believe, take us to school, where it is stupidly unpleasant to be, not because you are scared, but because you are bored and want the game to end as soon as possible. In short, Outlast yes, without blow yes, because this is a direct continuation of the first part, which will tell about who sent Miles this invitation to the mental hospital. There is no second Outlast at all, be very disappointed in the series, and again for the fools who have already reached out to write something against in the comments, I think so. Yes, I personally didn't like Outlast 2. You are already playing, do what you want, in short, draw your conclusions. It's just me sharing my opinion. You accept it or go check it yourself. Cyberpunk 2077. Many people wanted this game just as undeservedly as possible, but I, in turn, loved it very much. First of all, I liked it for its large and interesting open world. Secondly, with their characters and dialogues, they are written here just perfectly and that's just the way I like it. And thirdly, his incredibly touching sensitive story, which the plot is straight 10 out of 10, as it will be in the next games that I will call you. The graphics in this game are also a masterpiece, although for me it is not the most important in games, as I have already said. I always have a story in the first place in games, it is beautiful in this game. And because of this, many stop playing it somewhere in the middle. But this is the game that you need to go through to the end to enjoy it and understand the whole essence of the game, then you yourself will want to go through it. The first half of the game, like many players, I studied stupidly, and I didn't like it at the beginning, but then I figured it out and now I put it in the top 3 of my most favorite games. This is a very cool game with a great plot, a gorgeous open world, interesting buildings, and in general, why I'm repeating all this now, I do not know, but who will be interested, do not forget about that separate video about this game. You won't regret it if you look, the game is really worth your attention. And the next game is Heavy Rain, the game that opened for me the world of games in the style of interactive cinema. We will be given to play as 4 characters, the main character Ethan, an FBI agent, a detective and a journalist. Each hero has his own story, but which will somehow intertwine with other heroes. And the choice of each greatly affects the plot, which develops during the game and depends on the actions and decisions of the player. The choice in this game is not just an illusion, it really affects the game and the ending. And if one of the characters in the course of the game dies due to the wrong choice, the game will continue, but the death of the character can greatly affect the ending, of which there are already 18 in this game. When I was going through this game, I tried to do everything the way I would have done in real life and in the end everyone died for me. But the thrill is that this game is like in life, you can't go back or rewind the game to the last save. Everything is the same as in life, when any choice you make affects your life. The game is extremely similar to the masterpiece Detroit, because it is from the same developers, but although it is more popular than Heavy Rain, for me the plot of Detroit is very weak compared to Heavy Rain. The Dream Game is a movie and Heavy Rain is better for me. It takes about 6 hours to pass in one gulp. Like almost all the games from this video, passed it in one go per night. And yes, I will remember this game for a long time. And believe me, this game is not just for an amateur, this is exactly the game that everyone should go through. But this is not the last game in this video, since Far Cry 3 has been in the first place for 9 years. Far Cry 3 is the perfect game for me, and naturally in such tops I always have this game in the first place. They haven't created a single game for me yet that could surpass this one, well, from those that I have passed so far, because I have very big bets on The Witcher. But for now, Far Edge 3 is my favorite game, which I think everyone should pass. And for how many years no game has been able to move this place. For me, this game is perfect in everything, that's all in everything. I'm afraid of not mentioning something, but I'll try. The plot is here, it's just excellent. Imagine the word perfect, this is the plot of the headlights of the Edge. Characters. In this game, each main character is perfectly spelled out. You remember everyone after the first passage of the game and become incredibly attached to them. I can tell you the story of everyone right now, that's no problem at all, because every character here is spelled out perfectly. And I'm saying this for a reason, because my favorite characters were not only you and Jason, but Dr. Erhant and Lisa, I really empathized. And, okay, I won't spoilerize you any more people. Pumping. I have not yet met such a convenient and interesting pumping, which I want to use, as in this game, in any other. Pumping which does not just exist, but is really used, because every mechanic in this game is interconnected and pumping only contributes to a more diverse game and does not bother. Plus, it acts here as a working visualization in the form of a tattoo. The gameplay and atmosphere in this game is almost the most important thing in it. I want to explore the world and just be in it. Immersion is unrealistic. Rookland is a fictional paradise on Earth where you can do everything. Ubisoft was shown a story that gives emotions from the game that you can very rarely get in real life. And if you can't experience something like that, it's very rare. And this game is a 200% way to get. I remember once recording the gameplay in the summer. I thought I'd run through it quickly, I'll write it down. I played for 9 hours, spent the whole night just running around on the map and driving on transport. I'm talking now, and even now I want to go in and drive through these incredibly beautiful places again. That is, I am seriously in love with every corner of this game. I adore the tropics, jungles, beaches, trees, grass, sea, sky just like in real life. My brain loves them and I can't tell him dude, don't love them. Therefore, everything that is in this game, I love in reality, and it's like an embellished reality. And immersion in the world of Ubisoft turned out to be simply impossible. Someone may just not tolerate all these tropics and jungles, someone likes the world of GTA or Stalker more. We are all different and only because of this fact, someone may not like the game. And I'm glad that I understand that everyone has their own brain and everyone can't like one thing, even if someone loves it. Therefore, I will not impose anything on anyone. This game is perfect for me and I think that I am not the only one so special, and now the video will be watched by a person to whom this game will come in the same way as me. If you still decide to go through this game, after you pass, please come back and write honestly whether I was right. I just want as many people as possible to experience what I dream of experiencing at least once more in my life. The following parts of Far Cry in the plot plan do not reach the plot of the Troika at all. The 4 norms that can be passed once or twice, the 5 sucks, I don't advise anyone at all. I really liked the 6 at first, and I think that as a fan service, running around, completing tasks is normal, but the plot is incomprehensible and leads nowhere. The game does not carry anything interesting at all and therefore it can be skipped as well as the 5. In the sensational Dulci with Facem, it was almost not disclosed. If you take other Dulci, Dragon UAV is cool, Prime, well, SOSO, the plot is incomprehensible, but the mechanics are interesting. Well, there were some more. That's how I treat them. I just don't care about them. I won't say anything about the first, second part, because a lot of hate from boomers will come, and I also need them in subscribers, so let's live amicably.